Cremo. Once again, I'd like to welcome you to Aaradhna.
I'm glad to be back.
And I'm very pleased that in the previous interview, you took time to explain how the present ideas about human evolution may not completely be as accurate and may not fit in the whole body of knowledge which is available. So now we are going to discuss really what is this new idea you want to bring, and you are trying to convince the scientific community to incorporate it into their way of thinking. So let's start with the first. What, in your view, if we are not coming from apes, who are we and where are we coming from?
Well, I think before we even ask the question, where did we come from, we should first of all ask the question, the first one that you proposed, who are we really? What is a human being?
That's very logical.
Yeah, we should know what it is we're trying to explain. Otherwise, how do we know if we've explained it or not? So today, most scientists propose that a human being, or any other living thing, is simply a combination of the ordinary chemical elements. In other words, we're simply made of matter. But I think if we look at the information, at the evidence that comes to us from various fields of scientific investigation, we will see that it's more logical, more reasonable to say that a human being is a combination of three things. Ordinary matter, yes, but there's also a subtle mind element and also an element of consciousness. Now, we don't really have to speak so much about the ordinary matter because everybody already accepts that.
You are talking about elements like carbon, nitrogen, oxygen,
Yes.
iron, and so on.
Yeah, the ones you see in the periodic table
Yes.
of elements that every student loves. So, but what about this mind element? And I'm going to define mind in a particular way for a scientific discussion. Mind is a subtle material energy associated with the human organism that can act on ordinary matter in ways that we cannot explain by our current laws of physics. In other words, just like air is invisible, but we can observe the action of air as it moves over a denser element, such as water. We can observe its effects. So there is scientific evidence for a mind element, but again, it's been submitted to a tremendous amount of this knowledge filtering that we spoke about in the previous session. For example, every physics student learns about the work of Marie and Pierre Curie. They were husband and wife. They both got Nobel Prizes for their work in discovering radium. What we don't read in the textbooks is that they were heavily involved in research into what some people call the paranormal. They were investigating, in particular, psychokinesis. And they determined, according to their research, which they conducted with 3 other Nobel Prize winners and a whole group of other prominent European scientists early in the 20th century, that psychokinesis, mind over matter, is a real effect. They personally observed, under laboratory experimental conditions, large objects floating in the air without anything touching them. Now, that's a bit unusual. You don't read about it in your textbooks, physics textbooks, but the reports are there.
People know these things exist, yes?
Yes. Also, there are researchers now who are investigating the possibility that there is a conscious self that can exist apart from the body, apart from the brain. There are many medical physicians, doctors all over the world who are studying the phenomenon of out-of-body experiences or near-death experiences at a time when, for example, heart attack patients should be completely unconscious because blood has stopped flowing to their brains. They report separating from their bodies, observing what the doctors are doing. We also have evidence for a conscious self that can survive the death of the body in the form of psychiatric reports of past life memories. You know, for example, Ian Stevenson, a psychiatrist at the University of Virginia Medical School, has done extensive research into past lives reported by young children. And in hundreds of cases, he has been able to verify the existence of the person the child claims to have been in the past life. So if we actually look at all the evidence that comes to us from various fields of science, we'll see there's very good reason to say that a human being is a combination of mind, matter, and consciousness or spirit.
Can we back up a little bit? Mind matter. What is it? I'm still not clear. Now, you did talk about Madame Curie and her husband moving that object, see the movement of that object, but how does mind do that? Is that power of mind somebody is using?
Yes, because they were doing experiments with people who had those abilities, people who had psychokinetic abilities, mediums they're called, who by mental intention can cause these things to happen. And it's really not so surprising. For example, we know that electricity can, which is invisible, can support a train. You know, there are many trains in the world that float above iron rails on the basis of electromagnetism.
Yes.
They don't touch the rail at all. The electromagnetic force causes them to rise above the track. So just as magnetism, electromagnetism extends beyond the magnet itself, so our mind element creates a field which can extend beyond the body itself, and it can act on ordinary matter in
Is this
strange
mind
ways.
element of yours reside in the brain?
It resides within the brain and beyond the brain, just as an electromagnetic field extends beyond a magnet. So it's a similar idea that there's a mind field that's operating. And this is something that, it's an idea that I originally encountered in the ancient Sanskrit writings of India, that there is a subtle mind element that yogis can use, for example, to accomplish some very unusual feats that extend beyond the range of their normal senses and body.
Yogic flying and levitating?
Yes, things like that. So we know that such things exist in the form of these written documents, but if we actually look at the history of science, we'll see that there's actually scientific evidence for these same phenomena, although we don't usually see this evidence mentioned in the textbooks, although it comes from very famous scientists such as the Curies. Now, once we accept the idea that a human organism is composed of matter, a subtle mind element, and an element of consciousness, this leads to the idea that the cosmos itself is divided into different regions, a region dominated by ordinary matter, a region dominated by the subtle mind element, and a region dominated by pure consciousness or spirit.
Once again, how are you getting there? Through the Vedas or some Puranas?
Actually, through there is information like this in the Vedas, and practically every wisdom tradition in the world has a similar idea. Actually, this was the dominant cosmology in Europe until a few centuries ago. But even today, in astrophysics, modern cosmologists are having to introduce new dimensions to the universe. The latest theories speak about 11 levels, 11 dimensions to the universe, talking about string theory. To explain what they see through their telescopes, astronomers are now having to introduce new elements. They call them dark matter,
Yes, indeed.
strange dark matter, dark energy. In other words, to explain the world around us, scientists are finding they have to introduce new elements. So what I'm proposing is nothing very unusual. Simply to explain the life phenomena that we observe, we may need to introduce a mind element and a conscious element. And what I'm proposing is that we begin our existence on that level of pure consciousness, and if we become attracted to these lower energies, then that pure consciousness becomes covered, first by mind, then by matter. And that's what I mean by devolution. We don't evolve up from matter, we devolve or come down.
First comes the consciousness and then come you.
Yes, but then it's a process that can be reversed. Consciousness can be restored to its original pure state, and every great spiritual tradition in the world has some process of prayer or yoga or meditation which is meant to accomplish that. But here we're not talking about rituals and beliefs, we're talking about processes that actually work. Just as a geologist can tell you how to extract gold from an ore, where the gold may be mixed with other contaminating minerals. There's a process for extracting it. It's not a belief, it's not a ritual.
It can be done.
It can be done. So similarly, in the great wisdom traditions of the world, there are processes, there are techniques that allow us to extract pure consciousness from the covering elements with which it is now mixed.
So is it the consciousness we talk about in day-to-day terms that exists in us, especially when you are meditating? Then you
Yes.
go into the realm of that consciousness?
Yes, absolutely. You're speaking about one of the techniques that allows us to experience that consciousness in a pure form. For most people, their consciousness is very much absorbed in the external coverings of the mind and the body. It's as if you have a pure white light that's covered by a filter. You can cover light with different filters, and then the light is transformed. Actually, the light is the same. If you remove the filters,
Then it comes to
then
the
it comes to
original
its
form.
original form. It never changed. It's just that it was covered by different filters. So now our consciousness is covered by these filters, by these covering layers of energies, of lower energies, and it's possible to
I'm quite
restore it to its pure
fascinated
state.
by this idea of consciousness. Where did you find it? Which particular book? I'm familiar with some of them.
Well,
Is it one of the suttas?
it's found in Upanishads, it's found in Bhagavad Gita, it's found throughout
It
the
is all
Vedic
over,
literatures,
in fact,
Vedanta
it is.
Sutra, others. In particular, I learned it from my spiritual teacher, Bhaktivedanta Swami, from Bhagavad Gita mostly, which is a very simple
Indeed,
text.
indeed.
A very simple text, but Dehinosmin yata dehe, within the body there is the conscious self. So Gita is a very good source, for a very basic introduction to this topic, which is explained more in detail in the Sankhya philosophy and Upanishads and others as well.
We have in this program discussed these topics and how Gita, as you know, is the essence of the Upanishads, which are the
Yes.
essence of the Vedic knowledge.
Yes.
So you have brought these two together. Now, isn't it the same consciousness which also exists in other life form,
Absolutely.
like animals, like plants? Because that's the essential Hindu belief, isn't it?
Yes, it is. There are, according to the Padma Purana, 8,400,000 different types of bodily coverings. But those coverings are like vehicles for the soul, just like the same person can ride a motorcycle, a bicycle, an automobile, an airplane, a submarine, a space capsule, and still be the same person. The soul, the Atma, the conscious self, can occupy different bodily vehicles, but it's the same. It's the same.
So you are saying real you is your consciousness.
Absolutely.
Rest
yes.
of it is detail.
Yes, it's
And
vehicles,
as you say, we have
coverings.
different vehicles to move around, and you have proven you have really explained in your book that consciousness can exist without mind or matter.
Yes.
And it can be experienced, in fact, if you go into very deep meditation, which I have had the experience of doing. You can feel that consciousness. And there is a new book I would like you to point out to, although you have written such a fabulous book, and I would like our viewers to really enjoy that, and we will display that book here. But there is another book written by Dr. Peter Russell about faculty of consciousness. He has brought up the notion, similar notion to what you're talking about, and he's saying this faculty is not only in us, but in animals, and even down to rocks, which are made up of all the atoms and molecules. They all have their own consciousness, except that it is very feeble compared to the evolved consciousness we have.
Yes, in the human form of life, the consciousness is very well developed, and therefore we should take advantage. We should understand, Aham Brahmasmi, I am this
Yes.
conscious self.
It's a very short and sweet way of putting the whole reality. Aham Brahmasmi. Yes, very good. Now, I wish we had time to look into some of your details of your massive book you have. James Eastdale's experiences in last century, 18th century, but maybe people who want to really get a full flavor of your ideas. they would like to have this book, how can they order this book, by the way? The
well,
Human Devolution?
There is a website, humandevolution.com, where they can get it. It's also available in bookshops and through other internet sellers, but especially they may want to visit this website, Human Devolution, DEVOLUTION.
As opposed to evolution.
Yeah,
Yes.
devolution, yeah,
Yes.
humandevolution, one word, .com.
I thank you very much for bringing these somewhat revolutionary ideas into our realm of thought, and I'm pretty sure many of our viewers would like to explore it further.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Namaste.
Namaste.